Hey, what's up guys? It's Arcmoon back with another video. So, I just watched the Netflix live-action adaptation of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which is one of my favorite DC storylines, and I wanted to give my analysis on one particular dynamic of the story. I wanted to explore this idea of a rivalry or contempt between the main character Morpheus, or a Dream, with his sibling Desire. I was thinking about their dynamic and thought it quite interesting that these two in particular seem to be at odds. I wanted to explore the relationship and the relationships between all of the siblings, but this is the one that I think is most interesting, at least in Season 1. But before I start, if you like philosophy, anime, and now apparently comic books, feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications of future uploads. Now, to get into the video. In order to establish why these siblings, Dream and Desire, fight, we have to look at their respective functions. In other words, which domain does each of them rule over and control? As all of the siblings in the Endless are literally anthropomorphized concepts, a better question is to ask, what does it mean to Dream and what does it mean to Desire? Now, I have to warn you, unlike what a lot of people tend to think, the definitions of words are always nebulously defined, as words define other words decompositionally. That is to say that if you open up a dictionary, you may find that if you look for one word to be defined, but don't understand a word in the definition, and keep repeating this process, you don't ever end up at a place of understanding. Perhaps you might even end up where you started, rendering the defining process ultimately circular. Definitions, specifically of categories of things, are often debated about, like what constitutes a sandwich. The reason we don't have clear answers unless you set an arbitrary limit is because people share different intuitions about what particulars should be included in the category as a whole. So, it might be better practice to understand that what falls into a category really is just a bunch of loosely connected ideas with some commonalities shared, but it's not reducible to one. I became familiar with this idea in a paper on the philosophy of art called The Role of Theory in Aesthetics by Morris Weitz, where he's writing about what is considered art. He uses the Wittgensteinian idea of category. Now, I think this is relevant because we might not all agree on what is considered a dream and what is considered a desire. Unfortunately, since this video is limited to verbal explanation, my definitions or at least interpretations of words will fall into the earlier problem I outlined, but I will try my best to make it clear even if it's futile. I mention all of this because my main point relies on the difficulty of definitions and what things are considered what. So, firstly we can quickly go over what is obviously considered a dream. Clearly, they're the things we purport to experience when we sleep that we sometimes remember. I say purport because there's an ongoing debate in philosophy whether or not dreams are conscious, although if you ask me, for some reasons that aren't entirely relevant here, I think they are. So, yeah, obviously dreams seem to be mental content when we sleep. This certainly does not cover all of it though. In The Sandman in particular, Neil Gaiman seems to use it to mean vaguely more. For example, it seems to also include aspirations, like how Bet from the Diner episode dreams of becoming a writer. So, it seems to include goals or states that one wishes to inhabit in the future. It also seems to include fantasies and those types of things as well. Morpheus mentions later in this season that he includes the entire collective unconscious. The collective unconscious, a Jungian concept in his own psychoanalytic theory, includes all of the mythological and religious symbolism that is shared cross-culturally across humanity. Gaiman even includes non-human creatures, as demonstrated in A Dream of a Thousand Cats arc, so, as you can see, that which Dream encompasses is vast and varied. Desire, on the other hand, seems a bit more straightforward, but we run into an interesting problem when we look at the subjective interpretation of it rather than the way most would describe it literally. So much like one of the conceptions of dream, desire encompasses a longing for a particular thing, or state in the immediate or distant future. Now, there seems to be a problem here. This conception of desire seems to be already included in the conception of dream laid out previously. Here's the most obvious point I wanted to address. There's a natural tension because both members of the Endless are ruling over a similar if not the same domain, although dream encompasses much more. Now, on the point of the standard understanding of desire, there is some extra connotation. I just wanted to note that we went over some denotation, which is more literal definitions, but skipped over connotation, which is comparably important for this discussion. Connotation carries extra emotional information that is not necessarily encapsulated by the denotation. Although desire encompasses wanted things, it connotes that the want is impulsive and impure, which is negative. Dream, on the other hand, connotes something pure and admirable to aim for, which is a positive implication. This is consistent with Gaiman's characters' portrayals. Dream, for example, focuses on things like Bet from the Diner, once again aiming to be a writer. Even the other examples are implied to be necessary and good. In the case of Hell, dreams are a positive thing that work to further punish Hell's inhabitants with dreams of heaven. Desire, on the other hand, is portrayed as devious, evil, in a sense, even sexual and impure. The sexuality specifically manifests in Desire using the strategy of impregnating and infatuating Unity Kincaid when she's asleep during Morpheus' century-long imprisonment by Roger Burgess. Additionally, Desire's sigil is a heart, and their kingdom is lipstick red, which is often associated with being flush and sexually signaling. Dream also focuses on not getting lost in one's dreams entirely, in that although dreams are good, one ought not to get lost in them and live in the real world. Desire, on the other hand, seems to benefit from the impulsive wants of humanity. So to be clear, Desire has a natural resentment for Dream, as they control the same thing, but Desire is connoted negatively and carnally. There's probably more to say on this, but I'll move on to the other relationships demonstrated in Season 1 of the show. Desire and Despair, the twins of the Endless, are shown closely together. This one is quite obvious. I've already defined Desire, so I won't go over that again. However, despair is often what one is left with once they realize their initial desire will not grant them the fulfillment they initially thought it would, or that their desire is unattainable. Oftentimes, people experience these two states cyclically. One might desire something to cope with despair, only to end up with despair once realizing that their coping was unhealthy. Lastly, I wanted to go over Dream's relationship with Death, his older sister. These two are friends, with Death even acting as a mentor for him. This is an interesting dynamic in itself. Some think that the value of one's life is granted by its finitude. In other words, it is the fact that we die that we really get to live. The act of dreaming and striving is given meaning by death, so in a sense the concept of death guides dreams. This is clearly demonstrated by Gaiman's characters. Okay, so that was my quick analysis on the showcase members of the Endless in Season 1 of the Sandman. The others were mentioned, but I don't have enough information to talk about them yet. I may cover other aspects of the show, like the purpose of the Endless, as well as the Hobgadling story, or maybe even how Morpheus develops over the season. But, for now, consider liking and subscribing and show your support for the Sandman. This has been Arcmoon. See you later.